Hello and welcome to our fourth lesson from the first topic, an introduction to media studies. The first thing we're going to do today is complete a feedback form. Now, seeing as you're making your notes on the computer, it's not really easy for your class teacher to be able to come and give you any instant feedback. So in your booklets, you've got lots of pages dedicated to this kind of feedback, and it's a really simple symbol marking feedback system. What will happen is your teacher will come and circle one of the icons on a form like this. Your job is to put today's date, the topic we're currently studying, and then look up that symbol in the guide. You'll notice that in the guide, next to that symbol, will be 3 comments. Each comment relates to a certain area of improvement that you need to consider working on. For example, the clapperboard here relates to terminology. And there are 3 options. Use more media terminology, be more accurate with your use of terminology, or be more diverse with your use of terminology. So your job is to find that icon on the guide, choose one of the 3 options that you think applies to you, and write it in the box where it says teacher feedback. Underneath that, you need to put what you're going to do about it, how you're going to improve and develop your skills in media studies. For example, you could read through your terminology list at home. Today's lesson is all about computer games. How many different genres of computer game do you know? Maybe you could include different types of game as well. Here we have our title slide for this lesson, and again, as you can see, we're working on computer games today. And our lesson objective is to learn about the history and potential impact of computer games. We're still on the first topic, as you can see in the bottom left corner, and this is lesson number 4. Let's start with a brief history of computer games. Here you can see the game Pong, which was made by Atari in the 1960s. Atari was founded by Nolan Bushnell, who, with some of his other technicians, created the first computer games. In fact, the very first version of Pong they put on top of a beer barrel in an American bar, put on a coin slot from a kid's ride, and watched to see what would happen. They waited and they saw a man approach the machine, put in the first quarter, 25 cents, and play the first game of Pong. They finished their drinks and left. Hours later, getting a phone call from the bar owner who told them that the machine was broken. They went back, opened up the case and found out that it was filled with coins, and they calculated that that game must have been played every single minute since the first person put that quarter in until they arrived. There are several reasons why Pong was very popular. Not only was it a multiplayer game where you could challenge your friends, but also it relies on hand-eye coordination. And it turns out that generally speaking, females are better with hand-eye coordination than males. And that coincides with the rise of feminism in the 1960s and 70s. It was now perfectly acceptable for women to challenge a man to a game of Pong and beat them. It didn't take long before somebody realised that there was a lot of money to be made with these games, and if they were taken out of the pubs, where only over 18s could play them, you could actually target younger people. This was called an arcade. You need to remember that at this time, very few people had a television set at home, so arcades were the only place young people could really go to interact with this kind of technology and play these games. However, parents started getting worried as students were skipping school, ditching classes, mixing with undesirable types of people, and they felt that these arcades were places where drug pushers would corrupt their children. It was Atari who pushed computer games to the next level, as they realised that parents could be appeased by bringing the games into the home. Not only could you sell a game, but if you were to sell a console, you could then license out different games that would work on that machine to other people, meaning you could have much more content created by lots of different people. By the mid-80s, Nintendo had joined the scene with the Nintendo Entertainment System. But how else do people play computer games? Consoles are still considered to be one of the most popular ways to play computer games, and this all came off the back of the arcade being considered a dangerous, hostile and dirty place. Today, the most popular way to play computer games is actually on a smartphone, mobile or tablet. Most likely because mobile gaming is seen to be less geeky than any traditional form of computer gaming. Mobile games are designed to be simple, repetitive, and easy to complete. The popularity of mobile devices means that games are being created to suit every type of audience imaginable. Most mobile games are free, with micropayment options, and this means that they're easily accessible and anyone can get a copy of the game. This in turn can lead to trends and viral spreading of the latest and greatest must-have games like Pokemon Go and Fortnite. With all of the information you've learned today and all of the notes you've made from this lesson, it's time to start thinking about why computer games are so popular with a range of different audiences. Take a few minutes now to make a note of the different reasons you think games are so popular with different people. This image shows you the amount of money spent on computer games in 2019. And as you can see, $152 billion was spent, and that's an increase of almost 10% year on year. The biggest section is mobile gaming, and the biggest portion of that is from smartphones. The second biggest portion is from console games. You need to make notes on the 3 different financial models for mobile gamings. Number 1 is the download for free but include in-app purchase model. In Kim Kardashian Hollywood, for example, you can customize your character, your avatar. This can take time, but the process can be sped up by buying upgrades. The game itself is free, but you can buy in-game upgrades. Certain missions and scenarios can only be achieved by buying them. And many tasks require energy. The game is very clever, not giving you enough at times, so you either have to wait before playing or pay to play immediately. A lot of computer games on mobile use this in-app purchase model specifically to buy things like gems, coins or crystals, in-app currency that can only be spent within the game. The second model is in-app advertising. So again, the game is free, but they might have pop-up adverts for companies or even other games that you have to wait for before you can complete the game or continue to play. Now, different companies pay for this advertising. Again, in Kim Kardashian Hollywood, you get bonus items if you watch the adverts. The third financial model for mobile games is to simply sell the game. Many apps can just be purchased outright, and some games allow you to remove the adverts if you pay. And there are also some games that actually charge you a monthly subscription. This chart compares the money spent on computer games compared to films and music, 2 other media industries. As you can see, in 2000, they were roughly the same, with music being just above the others. In 2005, there's been a little shift, but still around that $20 billion mark. But in 2010, you can see computer games have exploded. They have completely skyrocketed, and that trend has continued. In 2015, you can see computer games have increased again, whilst music has actually decreased. And in 2020, again, you can see the exponential growth of the revenue from computer games. So why might that be? Why might computer games have gained so much more money over the past 20 years? There was clearly something that happened around 2010 over the last 10 years that has made the revenue for computer games go up. And I think a lot of that has to do with the smartphone, a whole new platform of computer games that not only is now accessible to lots of different audiences, that actually appeals to different audiences. Gaming is now no longer just for geeks with PCs or nerds with their at-home consoles. Everyone can play computer games. My grandma would play a little bit of Candy Crush. My dad will play brain training games. And my daughter will play games on her Kindle. So there are many different ways to target different audiences now. And I think that explains a lot of where this new money is coming from. The way the games are made also is designed to increase the amount of money a user will spend. When I was younger, you would buy a console for around £100 or so, and then every game would be somewhere between £20 and £30. And that would be it. Today, many video games let players spend money on digital loot boxes, and these offer features like new character outfits or skins, powerful weapons, new maps. Finding the rarest items in these boxes can be expensive for players and lucrative for game publishers because the contents are randomly generated. And this again has many people concerned that these loot boxes constitute gambling and therefore should be regulated like lottery tickets. Activision Blizzard, a company who make games, whose portfolio includes popular games like Candy Crush, Call of Duty, Hearthstone, they generated $4 billion in 2017 from in-game transactions alone, and that's more than half of its total revenue. Computer games are often blamed for causing damage to society. Particularly, older generations believe that the youth are having their morals corrupted and their values eroded by playing these computer games. In some cases, older people feel that computer games can make a child violent. And that brings us on to the idea of moral panics. That's when society fears that the values and ideologies, or the beliefs and morals, of a group of people, usually the youth, are being corrupted. So here are a few examples of moral panics. In-app purchases turning children into gambling addicts. Violent media making people more violent. Does the sexualization of the media raise teenage pregnancy? Is lad culture an extrinsic value creating sexist men? Mobile phones are making people antisocial, and fake news is making people stupid. Now, none of these are facts. None of these are even suggestions that I would say are, in some cases, even remotely true. These are the things that people point to when they discuss the idea of moral panics and when they feel that the youth or the children in their society are being corrupted. This is Stanley Cohen, and he was a criminologist, someone who studied crime and motives for committing crime. And he came up with this idea called the moral panic theory. Again, I've boiled down his thoughts here into 2 simple sentences, so please do go and read more about Stanley Cohen online, research his work and read his books. He generally thinks, though, the media, especially the news, overreacts to social behaviours and represents them as dangerous. He thinks that the negative social behaviour that we see is blamed on another media product, such as computer games. The following few slides have A-level only in the top left corner. This indicates that the content we're about to cover is really only intended for A-level students. If you are a GCSE student or a BTEC student, then you can skip the part of the video until that disappears. So according to Cohen, there are 6 different stages of a moral panic, and they're listed here. First of all, there's a crisis. Someone, something, or a group are defined as a threat to social norms. For instance, there might be a spate of violent crime committed by teenagers. So this crisis is kind of identified. Then the issue is put through this process called censification, where we become sensitive to that issue and we turn the threat, this violent crime for example, into a symbol. It's no longer violent crime, it's now teenagers and violent crime. This leads us on to stage 3, which is the witch hunt. The portrayal of this symbol is personified and blame assigned to a media product. So for example, the reason these teenagers are committing violent crimes is because they've been playing Call of Duty. Stage 4 is amplification, where there needs to be a response from the authorities and policymakers within that society. So you might get a politician saying we should ban these games. Stage 5 is panic. The original issue of violent crime is actually largely forgotten, and now the panic and the issue is about children playing violent games. And lastly, stage 6 is counteraction. This moral panic results in social changes. Maybe the game gets banned, or a company gets sued, or age ratings have to be redouble checked. Here's an example of the moral panic theory in action. Stage 1 was crisis. There's a wave of violent crimes committed by teenagers, and that starts to make headlines. Stage 2, censification. The news media sensationalizes and overplays links of violent crimes to computer games. Stage 3 is the witch hunt. Grand Theft Auto is singled out as the game turning our youth into murderers, with a focus on gaming addiction as the problem. And you can see that in these news headlines. Stage 4, amplification. The issue of gaming addiction fuels the media frenzy. Journalists try and find more tenuous links for attention-grabbing headlines. Stage 5, panic. Audiences believe that the media can cause behavioural changes. And lastly, number 6, counteraction. New laws and legislation about gaming addiction are enacted. The three images you see in the middle of the slide here are genuine, real headlines from a news story. So many people think that computer games can have negative implications and actually affect us in negative ways. Can you think of any of the negative implications there are of playing video games? Now we need to consider if there could be any positive effects of playing computer games. Take a few minutes to consider and jot down any positive impacts of playing computer games that you can think of. Your final task of this lesson is to create a table which explores the positive and negative effects of playing computer games. Going through your notes that you've just made, make a table like this. List the positives, list the negatives. You've now made it to the final slide of the lesson, and it's time to reflect on what you've learned. Quickly read through the basic, moderate and advanced success criteria and see if you manage to complete them all. As always, here is the specific terminology used within this lesson. If you still have time left and are trying to improve your learning of this topic, then here's an extension activity for you. Research the advertising and marketing campaigns of the Microsoft Xbox One and the Sony PlayStation 4. Here is a second extension activity in case you get all of that work finished. Create a fact file on a game franchise of your choice. Here you can see some examples of exam questions that would feature the content learned in this lesson. Congratulations on getting through this entire lesson. That's the end of lesson 4 from the first topic of an introduction to media studies. I look forward to speaking to you again.